This is TWiT.
All right, printers, the technology we love to hate. We have a printer. It's out in our converted garage, which is now my wife's workspace, but and I swear at it every once in a while. It's just it's a standard game that I play. Now there are more reasons to hate them. Cory Doctorow actually wrote a piece for the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation site, EFF.org, and he focuses on all things that suck about consumer printers, but more specifically about label printers, which I'll get into in a second. But I probably don't need to remind you all the reasons why actual printers suck, right? Like, it's that upfront investment. It's a large, clunky piece of hardware. Hopefully it lasts a long time. But I feel like my experience with printers is that we buy them and then maybe they last 5-6 years, which I guess is okay longevity. But why can't they last longer than that, you know? And then they're just a landfill, thrown in the landfill, I'm assuming. You know, it's just no good. And it also happens to be kind of like you buy the razor and you buy the blades. You buy the printer, that's a big upfront cost, and then you pay just as much for the ink over time because you always need ink, so you're buying it forever. And sometimes that ink really sucks for many reasons. Maybe the ink is just poor, you know, and it's spotty or whatever. Maybe the manufacturers have added DRM chips to the ink cartridges. And this has just been kind of an insidious inclusion that, I mean, I think I've gotten used to, but just sucks, right? It's essentially, it's a chip on the ink that has a cryptographic key that's built into the printer by the manufacturer. And of course, the key on the chip has to match the key in the printer in order for that printer to actually say, all right, you can use the ink. Even though any manufacturer could make a supported ink cartridge, if they're missing that chip, it's just not going to work. So ultimately, that's a way for the printer manufacturer to get you to pay your money to them instead of anyone else, right? It's unnecessary, but it's something that's built in purely because it gives them an ongoing, almost endless revenue stream for their printer. So you can kind of understand business-wise why they do it, but it just sucks. Well, Cory points out that supply chain issues that we've been talking about a lot have been wreaking havoc on printers because, you know, in some cases, those little DRM chips can't be manufactured. What happens when that happens? Well, your printer doesn't work anymore because you can't buy supported ink anymore because you can't find any ink with the DRM. So that's one aspect, but he really focuses mostly on label printers, and label printers operate a little differently than the printers that I have in my garage. It's a thermal printer. The print head basically heats up, and a special type of paper reacts to that. It's called thermoreactive paper. It turns black when it's heated in a special way. But with label printers, you can't DRM an ink cartridge because one doesn't exist, right? It's just like a heating element. And so label printers have kind of been free and clear of this like DRM hurdle until now. Cory points out the Dymo brand is setting the trend. They are relying on RFID chips to identify their own reams of thermal paper. So instead of DRM on the ink or, you know, that supply, they're DRMing the actual paper that goes in. And, you know, they point out that, hey, we're doing this because you get special features. You know, you get auto sensing of the type of label that you're printing. You get auto counting of the number of labels that are remaining. You know, the features like that, features that honestly could be implemented without the need for an RFID technology. Like, there are many ways to do that. But because this is a special kind of technology approach for these thermal reams, Dymo can charge $10 to $15 per roll, and that's compared to $2 to $5 per roll, which is the industry standard for papers like for thermal paper like this. Wow! And that money goes to Dymo, doesn't go to anyone else. And if you have that label printer, you have no choice. Like, you have to buy that supported paper. And I read this article and I was like, oh, just, you know what grinds my gears is that really grinds my gears. So I don't know. Yeah. What are your thoughts? You've got to hate printers as much as anyone.
Yeah, I do. And I actually, so Leo will sometimes, when he gets questions on the tech guy over the weekend, because those questions come from your average everyday person and tech user. And so he'll get questions relatively regularly about printers. A lot of times, though, they don't even make it to the show, although they are out there. And one of the things that Leo's asked is like, hey, why do you use a printer? Why do you need a printer? What is it that you do that requires a printer? And different folks have different reasons. I use a printer because I like to do crochet and knitting and other different types of craft projects. And for me, it's easy to have a piece of paper where I can check things off as I complete the different parts of the pattern. And so I use a printer relatively regularly. It's fairly old school. I bought it back when I was in college and have just kept it going for as long as I have. And it does have some level of DRM, but because it's older and doesn't have all of the new stuff that makes it even more complicated, I've just kept it around and it works fine for what I need it for.
Nice.
The idea that a company is not making enough money or feels like it's not making enough money or feels like it could make more money by locking you into a specific type of paper is ridiculous. That article, I think you mentioned early on, they calculated the cost of ink to produce versus what people pay for it, which just enraged me. And so a lot of times when you are working in something that you're printing a whole lot of it, then and you only need it to be in black and white, a thermal printer makes sense. And buying that thermal paper from third parties is good. What I like is that life finds a way, and it's very likely that someone will come out with something, probably on one of the websites that Burke frequents, that he'll usually share with me, where you can go and buy specialized parts that people have made for different things to circumvent this. But I shouldn't have to. It's this idea that like you've made this bed and now you have to lie in it. I don't like it when Internet of Things companies make this is a very famous example. There was, and I won't go into super detail, but essentially there was this company that made a smart home hub for your home. You buy it and it's got all of the different kind of radios and method protocols for communicating with different devices in your home. Then you could use it to communicate with anything in your house that was smart home. Very cool idea. You buy the thing, you set it up, it's good to go. They decided, instead of continuing to honor the fact that you bought this product and you have it now, they decided to add a subscription service to it. And it really upset people, because you can't give someone something and then take it away and ask them and tell them that if they want it back, they need to pay for it now. Like, they already paid for it. They paid for it when they bought it in the first place. If you feel like you can't keep your company going on buying something and then have like that is your customer, then you need to start with the subscription service. It needs to be part of the service kicking off. At the very least, you need to grandfather in your current or grandmother in your current set of customers. At the very least, I would go a step further and say that that's just wrong in the first place. Another thing is the Cricut cutter. It's this sort of craft cutting tool that will cut paper and vinyl and all these kinds of things. Originally, you could use the tool that they have to basically make custom cutting jobs. Then they decided to start charging for the software that does that. And people were very upset. They did walk it back to where current customers are grandmothered in. And yes, I'm going to start saying that going forward. But they weren't going to do that at first. And that's how I feel about these kinds of things, is if you've set it up this way in the first place, that's the choice you made, you're stuck with it. You should have started with a subscription, or in this case, charging for the paper if that's what you wanted to do. Or not charging for the paper, but making it so that you have to use this paper if you want to. And that's just how it should be going forward, or else you're going to lose clients to or customers to other companies. So it'll be interesting to see kind of if they end up walking this back. The other example of having supply chain shortages that mean that you can't make the stupid little chip you put inside of the ink cartridge that requires that ink, like that was a delicious story in one way, because it was a bit of schadenfreude we got to experience as these companies no longer could kind of gouge as they wanted to. But and at the same time, it was also hurting their relationships with customers, because customers who had bought into this whole idea that you have to use their ink, they couldn't even buy the ink and use it with their printer. It's foolish. It's upsetting. And I just ultimately feel, again, you make, what is it? You made the bed, you got to lie.
Reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow, and all of the other versions of that same saying.
Yeah. Well, you said the world finds a way, and, someone might create something to get around this. Cory does point out the Digital Millennium Copyright Act would potentially make that a crime for someone to do that, right? To bypass the DRM technology is kind of a big part of what the DMCA is all about. So, but I mean, maybe not, but, something to consider there too. So in order to use your product the way you should have always been able to use it in the first place, you would then have to break the law, based in current standards. And that's not necessary, or, shouldn't be the way that it is. But anyways, Cory did point out that Dyno's the only label printer doing this right now, but that it's possible that others might, hop on board. And yeah, he actually suggests, he's like, if you have one of these printers, just throw it away. Like literally throw it away, and buy a new one from not Dyno, because you will pay more in the long term by their model than you would just getting rid of it, cutting your losses, and buying a new one and getting super cheap printer or paper.
That there tells you how foolish a decision that it is that Dyno made that choice. Yeah. That right there. If I can save money by throwing this thing away and getting a new one, then what the heck? But I think that they rely on folks just kind of doing, there's a lot of friction to making a change. If you know how to use this current label printer, if you know that it works with your system, if you're worried, one of these days I need to just set up, I'm writing this in my head now. There's a website where this reference I make all the time is going to exist. But it's from my favorite Pixar movie, A Bug's Life. And I know I've brought it up on the show before, but for new listeners, there's a scene at the very beginning of the movie where these ants are walking along with the food that they're supposed to be carrying to the anthill. And a leaf falls from the sky into their path. And the ants freak out. They don't know what to do now, because there's a leaf in their path. They can't walk forward. What do we do? What do we do? We're so used to just doing the same thing over and over again. They have to call out a specialist who looks them all in their eyes and is like, listen, we're going to go around the leaf. We're just going to go around the leaf. Walk with me now. Walk around the leaf. And they have to focus on him. They're freaking out as they just make this very little step around the leaf, and then they're able to carry on in their path, and they're so happy about it. But that, of course, is a very, very heavy example of what this is. But we human beings do not ultimately like change, and having a leaf fall in our path is enough to kind of make us afraid to make that change. So I think that the company is relying on that in a lot of ways, and it does work for them. But you just wish that you could sort of push that idea out there that he has of look, get rid of it, get a different one. You're going to save money in the long run. I want to tell everyone out there who has a Dymo printer, just make this change. And then it would hurt, and then the company wouldn't do it. And then maybe other companies would follow through.
Right. There.
Not to be a revolutionary or anything, but goodness.
Viva la label maker!
There it is. Viva la label maker. Please.
I think we have a title.